Hello and welcome back to Manibil. This is my first comments answering of questions video following the last chapter in my presentation of my philosophy, which was ethics and a moral principle. Now I have deliberately waited or held myself back from commenting too quickly following the end of my presentations, because I feel I am a little, I don't want to say I am emotionally attached to my philosophy, because I try not to be, but still it's unavoidable that you are not. I think it's a kind of pride, you could say. If I suffer from something, it might be a little about pride, right? It's like, if I have made something, created something that I think is worthwhile, and I've sort of, if I'm in a working environment, let's say, a workplace, and I've created something and somebody else takes credit for it, that pisses me off, right? I don't want to be, become the CEO of the company just because I made a nice presentation or whatever it is we're dealing with. But I want to get the credit, right? So I have a little sort of pride in my produce, and I don't think it's necessarily hurtful. It's like, well, if I created it, give me the credit. That's why painters wrote their name on the painting, so you can always say, so that's the painter, right? So he sort of gets the credit for what he's done, right? So, and that's why this is a Kubrick movie, right? Kubrick presents, Spielberg presents, and so on, right? You know what I mean. So pride is an important feeling, but it shouldn't, as Aristotle would say, it shouldn't overpower you, right? It's this sort of a golden mean of things, right? There's no emotion that is bad, to use a Christian quote, right? Or good or evil, right? That's just people wanting to manipulate you using your emotions. But if you put too little or too much importance into them, it's probably going to hurt you in the end, or along somewhere down the road. Because that's the reason why we have psychology, right? It's the balancing of emotions and desires and all this, right? So a functional person is someone who can balance these emotions without being, manipulated by other people and their emotions, right? Okay. So just to sort of get back to a normal everyday response level, where I've sort of, my pride is sort of down to normal again. You know what I mean, right? So I'm not caught up in the presentation, and so I've done it finally. I am, and I expect people to come and tell me how good I am. I don't want, don't give me, don't appeal to my vanity, please, right? But don't dismiss me by stupid argumentation. I think I deserve a better. If you're commenting on this, please do some effort, man, right? And it's not to discourage you from commenting, but just give it a thought or two before you react, right? That you're not actually reacting in a way that my philosophy tries to avoid desperately, right? Then you're just sort of, without even knowing it, you are actually pointing out the stricture, the strictness of my philosophy. So, okay, because Johnny Isometric is the one who has written most comments on I'll take his comment first, right? So I have to cut and paste a bit to fit it into the slide. So I think it's okay, right? Okay, so Johnny Isometric takes out from minute 30 from timestamp 30 minutes and 7 seconds, where I say if you go into a shop and there's some shit lying around on some shelves and there's some prices, it's kind of an open argument. Yeah, this is somewhat out of context, right? But you know, it's fine. He asked, are there other examples of open agreements? Well, I mean, have you done some thinking yourself? I mean, don't ask me to do your thinking, right? My philosophy is not your invitation to let me tell you how to think. Yeah, I'm telling you how to think, but not specific kind of thinking. I'm trying my best to tell you that you should think for yourself. Why don't you come up with an example of an open argument, right? Or, excuse me, open agreement. Well, figure it out, man, right? Maybe there aren't any more kinds of open agreements. I'm not going to lecture you, but I appeal to people thinking for themselves, and I suppose there might be some listeners out there who don't usually comment on my videos, but who reads the comments, or think about my videos and read the comments and see how I react to the people who are very sort of in your face commenting. And I'm not judging anybody here, but there are sort of the extroverts and the introverts and all that, right? My philosophy, the way I do my philosophy, it's sort of built into the thinking that what I call you, what I call an individual or an object, is a representation of something outside myself, right? So I can't lecture my experiences on how to think or on what to think. If anything, I can tell them what to experience, right? If you need an interpretation, an abstraction, it's based on category A and B, which is qualia and cognitions, right? According to my philosophy, my ontology. Then if I'm saying you should interpret this as X, well, what is it right? I'm thereby I would be trying to circumvent your experience and the interpretation of that experience. I can't give you the interpretation, and then you will be sure that when you have an experience, this is the kind of interpretation I should take. I can appeal to the thinking behind it, right? And give you an example like some shit lying on some shelves, right? But you might be wrong. You might think that it's an open agreement, and it's not. You thought this was a shop, but it wasn't a shop, so to say, right? How would you know? Well, circumstances, right? Why don't you give me an example of an open agreement, right? Okay, so there's another, additional question here is, by being in a certain country, for instance, should one be considered to have implicitly agreed to all its laws? Well, again, and I answer this directly here, right? Do I use the term law or country in my philosophy? See, he's bringing in some terms. Johnny Isometric has told me he doesn't have a philosophy. But he is apparently so great in this non-philosophy of his that he can bring in some terms, some abstractions, apparently, and then inflict them on me and say, how would you deal with these abstractions I have? Right? That's why I'm saying I don't use the terms law and country in my philosophy. Right? You can't argue this way. It's just It's this, the dogmatic approach. Johnny Isometric is clearly dogmatic. Well, I have heard about this. I have heard these sounds that has given me these impressions, these abstractions, and now I have to deal with them. No, you don't. What you need to do is have your own philosophy, right? Okay, then Johnny Isometric follows up by saying, even if you don't use them, those terms he used, right? They're still a part of category C. Yeah, your category C, right? They're part of your category C. Don't inflict your fucking abstraction on me, right? I have an abstraction. You need to deal with my abstraction. No, I don't. I don't, right? It's not my problem that you have an abstraction. And then that's why I tell you, I don't deal with your abstractions. One of the ways I say why the reasons or the good fallouts of my philosophy is what we have to agree about are what we can objectify, right? And how do you figure out, and we might do this, right? How do you figure out if something can be objectified? Well, CSSTT, right? Does it have a color? Does it have a sound? Does it have a taste? Does it have a touch? Does it have a smell, right? If it has none of these, it is not something that can be objectified. And I would say even further, it has to have a color. Otherwise, it's not objectified. And I think I explained that in my presentation of objectification and maybe the ontology, right? Okay. So, law, what is that? Does it have a color? No. You might show me a book or a piece of paper, but then that has already been objectified, right? It has been objectified as a book, or as paper, or as ink, or whatever, movie or something, right? It has already been objectified. Then you can re-objectify it as another thing and saying, now I'm upgrading it to the standard of whatever. When it has already been objectified, then that's the object we're dealing with. You can't say, well, this object is special. It's a special abstraction kind of object. No, you can't inflict your abstractions on the object and say the object is now special because I have an abstraction. You might have all the abstractions you want, but you can't inflict your abstractions on me. I'm just seeing an object, right? That book over there. Okay. Do we need to move it? Am I interested in it? I don't give a fuck about that book. Fuck that book, right? So I don't have an agreement about the book, so I'm not going to follow any agreements. Fuck it, right? Don't you get my philosophy? Don't you understand it? Right? You don't understand the meta level of thinking and then applying it to a sort of an everyday experience, though I am directly addressing what I suppose is your experience that is similar to mine. And if it's not similar, please tell me why it's not similar. Right? Since an agreement, explicit or implicit, I don't think there's implicit agreements, right? But it's again, it might depend. If you want an implicit agreement, okay. I don't think I'm going with any kind of implicit agreement. What would that be? Mommy telling you have to do shit, right? That's an implicit agreement. You're born into a system of religion and then it's implicit agreement. Fuck that shit, right? So in my opinion, my way of dealing with an agreement would be it has to be directly addressing objects and with all the time frames and all that shit, right? If it can't be that, I'm not interested in that agreement. Then leave me alone, right? Since an agreement can deal with prices and yet to be built houses, I assume by any other abstraction is also allowed. You could, for example, make an arrangement with an individual so that the goods he sells you come from a certain country and comply with specific. I don't know what a law is, right? You have to define what a law is in reference to my philosophy. I don't use that term. So you need to find a term that references my philosophy, or I am not going to address your question, mate, right? So be specific in reference to, this is my philosophy channel. You can't go on my channel where I have my philosophy and I'm using particular terms and structures of thinking, and then say, I don't have a philosophy, but I'm going to use some different terms. Now answer my question. I'm not going to do that, mate, right? Please, come on. You have to reference my philosophy because that's what I'm working from. I can work from some undisclosed philosophy that you apparently don't have because you stated outright that you don't have a philosophy. So, you have to do better, mate. And then he sort of continues, I don't know if these are, let's see. So what is the conceptual difference between implicitly agreeing to the unilateral terms set by store owners and implicitly agree to the unilateral terms set by the lawmaker? I'm not going to, because these are not, you're not using terms. You are not, the agreement you want is to abstractions. Mate, wake up, man. I'm specifically pinpointing what you agree on. Objects, right? And how you get to these objects. You use qualia, right? And you have to figure out how to deal with this objectification in order to understand what you can agree upon, or what I am willing to agree upon, I should say. If you want to agree on some abstraction, fine, be my guest. Just don't expect me to participate in it, right? I can't answer these questions because you are trying to screw up you're trying to gaslight me or strawman my philosophy, maybe you could say, but say, well, you have to answer this question. No, I don't, because you are referencing what I consider to be abstractions of some kind, not objects, right? Then there's a parenthesis down here. I raised the question because if someone doesn't like a shop, they can just walk out. But if someone doesn't like their country, they're still run into governments trying to rule over them pretty much anywhere on the planet. Okay, whatever your incentive for asking the question doesn't really change the question, right? My philosophy is an appeal to what I'm going to do, because I can't tell you what to do. You are a figment of my imagination, right? I have just told you I am treating you as a representation of something outside myself I can't get to. So whatever you are out there, I can't get to. So I can't tell you what to do, right? I can only tell you what I'm going to do. And if you put together the same way that I am, and you don't have a philosophy, maybe you want to try mine, right? And if you don't want to try mine, why don't you? Because then you're working from some kind of dogma then. There's no other possibility, in my opinion. So what I'm hearing is you want to ask these questions and try to establish some kind of gray zone that you can sort of point to and say and dismiss my philosophy so you can keep your dogmas, right? Then mommy is still the greatest philosopher in your life, right? It's incredible that all these children grow up and they all seem to figure out that mommy was the greatest philosopher of all time, right? Through these last 15 years or so, I can't count how many times I heard somebody say, well, I was brought up to think. I have always learned that you should think whatever. This is how to understand things, right? Well, who was it that brought you up, right? It was probably mommy, right? Because most men nowadays, they're simp bitches, right? So is mommy telling you what to do, or somebody that mommy has accepted should inflict themselves on you mentally, right? So these dogmas that have been implanted in you, you want to keep them, because rejecting the dogmas or do some Cartesian doubt about what you think you know, right, is problematic, possibly, not least nowadays, right? And you are appealing to all these people who want to control you, possibly, right? You're probably appealing to somebody, some potential individuals showing up at your door with some violence threat. But that doesn't change my philosophy. My philosophy is my philosophy. You have to address it by yourself. I can't address your situation. You can't create some hypothetical situation. Because there are no hypothetical situations that you have to deal with in reality. Because these are real situations. You can use the hypothetical situation all you want to try to mentally prepare yourself for when something similar might occur in the future, right? But I will probably never be in a situation where we have to agree. If that day comes, so be it, right? But if I'm not a part of that situation, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have to do it yourself. Don't you understand that? You can bring up all these abstractions all you want. What you have to deal with, what color does it have? What sound does it have? Is this an elephant? Is it a bicycle? Does it move? Does it not move? And so on. That's what you have to do. If you can't find flaws in my philosophy, I'm not going to take your appeal to some kind of application of my philosophy is somewhat difficult for you. That's up to you. That doesn't change my philosophy. Just because you're not good at riding the bicycle I create doesn't mean it's a bad bicycle, right? Just because you expect to ride the Tour de France because you bought my bicycle, it's not a problem of my bicycle, but it's a problem about your approach to bicycling. Okay. Next slide. Then we have Sean Chaudhry 541. Funny name. Okay. The Sean Chaudhry, and I have read these comments a few days ago, but I haven't planned any reaction. So I'm trying to present my reactions here as straight from the heart as best I can, right? An agreement is just the alignment of interests or preferences, in my opinion. Okay, so fine, you are thinking for yourself at least, right? So you have an idea what an agreement is. You're trying to think what is meant by an agreement. I think that's a start at least, right? I might agree, I might not agree. I don't think you are aligning your interests, because an interest is a kind of rationalization, right? You could say you are aligning in them, but be careful, because what you're doing, you are aligning your interests with some objects, right? You're not aligning yourself with somebody else's interest. Be careful that you're not doing that, in my opinion, because then you are still arranging your objects according to somebody else's preference, as you imply here. Be careful, right? That's why I want to go for objectivity. There's so many people referencing the idea of objectivity that I feel it's necessary. And nobody has defined what they mean by objectivity. And all definition I have seen contradicts other definitions and so on, right? That's why I'm saying an agreement is what to do about a situation that concerning the objects that are participating in that situation with those involved individuals. How that looks now and how it should look at some point in the future. It's sort of a generalized abstract approach, it's a philosophy about it, right? So that's why you need an idea of the future. This rock could be moved from here to there, right? This bicycle has to go from here to there, right? This apple needs to be cut in half or in 4 parts and be placed on these plates, right? You might not need to spell it out this precise in order to make an agreement, but why not? Because there's nothing to be disagreeing on then, right? It's pretty obvious how it should look at that far end, or that point in the future where it's expected to be composed that way, right? So you're dealing with the objects. You're not dealing with somebody's incentives, because as soon as you do that, it's very likely you're going to be manipulated, and your incentives are going to be manipulated by somebody else's interest so they can take advantage of you, right? Be careful. In my opinion, if there isn't an agreement, especially in moral issues, well, there's no agreement about moral issues. You have completely misunderstood what I'm doing. You don't have agreements about moral issues. It's the morality is that I'm going to follow what I agree to in order to be moral. Morality is living up to what you agree to, in my opinion. But that means if I don't agree, I don't have to live up to anything. Or at least I don't have to live up to anything that I haven't agreed upon, right? So you can't agree upon moral issues, because if there are moral issues, there was some agreement that wasn't followed. Then there would be moral issues. That's what you're saying. But you kind of make I guess you could have a backup agreement, an additional agreement maybe to an agreement about objectivity, that what happens if agreement is not followed, but it bites itself in its ass. Because if this agreement wasn't followed, why would I follow another agreement about how to deal with agreements that are not followed? This agreement will probably not be followed either if this first one wasn't followed, right? No, but then again, you might want to think about how you do agreements. So if somebody starts to slide in the wrong direction, you can sort of pull out and say, well, it's not going well, right? You're immoral, as I pointed out. You're not following the agreement, right? But you have to refer to the agreement. You can't refer to your emotions, right? You have to say, according to the agreement, at this point, this apple should be here. It's not here. So, and you're the individual who had to make sure that it's done. I can't blame the other people who didn't have this agreement, right? Or hadn't had this responsibility within the agreement. So you're immoral for not living up to it, right? So then there are moral issues, but then it's within the agreement. The moral issues is exactly when the agreement is not followed. So you can't make agreements on moral issues, right? And this is the whole problem. This is how morality is dealt with so far for the last, 2 billion years of human beings. There is an agreement, especially moral, then violence is the only other viable option. Okay, yeah, sure, right? So if you agree with your girlfriend to go to the movies and she doesn't show up, so you need to kill her, or what? Is that it? Come on, man, right? Don't create this sort of straw man argumentation that if this is not the case, you're creating a misconstrued understanding of what it means to agree on something, right? And then you say the only alternative is to beat somebody up, right? Or kill them, or whatever you mean by violence. A contract is an agreement or deal that is only enforced by a third party. No. There are no third parties in my philosophy. Don't bring in some shit. There's no third party. Well, I'm not participating. What is the third party? What is that? I'm agreeing with somebody to do something. Yeah, there's a third party over. What? Where does that come from? It's not a part of my philosophy, right? Don't bring shit into my philosophy that I have to deal with. Fuck you, man. It's the same problem as with the Johnny Isometric before, right? You're bringing shit in, you have your dogmas. And one of the first things I suggested to get rid of when you start to do the ontology and get to a reduction base is get rid of your fucking dogmas, right? Pretend that you don't have them. And if you are, when you're finished doing your philosophy, if somebody confirms your dogmas, okay, fair enough. But otherwise, you're probably going to venture into a particular direction where you get what you want. You get something, you get to a point where you can confirm your dogmas. So you don't have a philosophy. You're basically misusing, what's the term I'm looking for? In sort of in bad faith, I think it's called, right? You are pretending to be philosophical, but you're basically twisting philosophy around to get a confirmation of your dogmas. And I mean, this is basically all philosophy. Avoiding this completely is so difficult because it feels like your whole world is being turned upside down or being rejected, right? And to a large extent it is. The hardest work doing philosophy is not actually doing philosophy, it's getting rid of all the bad thing you have already, right? It's rejecting all your bullshit that mommy and daddy and priest and government and so on told you. Put it aside. Start from scratch. That's my approach, because that's what it has to be, right? All you were told to apply or adhere to was because somebody else benefited from it, not you. Why would I go and inflict something on somebody else that I didn't benefit from some way or somehow, right? Telling them what to do, parents telling the children what to do, is so that the parents benefit some way or another. It might be avoiding looking ridiculous or having a stupid child or whatever it is, but they benefit some way or another. You have just internalized all this bullshit to become some kind of Frankenmonster of a philosophy, right? Fuck it. You start from a blank slate, not the Lockean blank slate. You start from scratch. You get rid of all the bullshit, and it's probably only bad apples. So out with the bad air, right? To reference Peter Sellers in the Curse of the Pink Panther, right? Out with the bad air, in with the good, out with the bad air. Oh yes. Out with the bad philosophy. Even if there's good shit, out with it. Get rid of it, right? You can't have this, doctored pizza. And say, yeah, there's a little bit of the pizza here over here. That's okay. No, it's all infected with doctors, right? You should proceed that way, thinking that way. So get rid of the shit. Start from scratch, right? And get back to me. Tell me how it goes, right? This is basically jumping in at the deep end and saying, how would you swim in this shark-infested waters, right? Huh? You need a bigger shark. Well, fuck you, right? Come on. Okay, Sean Chaudhry 541 is at it again here, right? Okay, then he says, at the end of the day, I think, and it's sort of a slightly patronizing, right? It's like, yeah, I have watched your 6 hours of philosophy, but at the end of the day, right? It's like, okay, I'm the big gun around here, right? I think if we, no, there's no we here. There's only a you, right? Even if you have an agreement, there's still no we. There's no we. We is possibly the most dangerous word in the history of human beings, right? The we think, the hive mind, the society thing, right? There's no we. There's only a you, okay? Me and my abstractions. Is that a we? Me and my abstractions. I think if we dismantle the average person's ethics, it would just come down to preference. Okay, so what? I don't care about the average person. I care about my philosophy. And if I can agree with some objects with an average person, so be it. I don't even need to care about their philosophy, basically. I think that I would get into more fruitful agreements if people would apply my philosophy. But if I can agree with some, average person on, if you get this apple, I'll take this orange. Do you agree? Yes, fine. And we part ways. He could be a fucking moron for all I care, right? But if he was a smart person who can actually do a philosophy and apply my philosophy in the best of my understanding of the quality of my philosophy, we could possibly develop something that was had more potential. But I'm not going to tell anybody, the average person, the average, all the stupid idiots, right? It's the old George Carlin quote that look at the average person, how stupid it is. They are. The average person is stupid, and then think half of them are even stupider than that because it's the average person, right? But I don't care about the average person. Right? It's not my responsibility that there's some average person somewhere, right? And what would an average person be? Aren't you just raising yourself to some high level of standards and judging yourself from how other people are, and you think you're better than them? Be careful, mate, right? Come down to preference. Sure. Yeah, some kind of preference. If I see that apple, I have a preference for that apple, right? But if there's another individual over there, I have to come to an agreement according to my own standards, right? Or I need to flee. That person might have a preference, he might not have a preference. How the hell would I know? A preference is some kind of abstraction, right? And if it's somebody else's abstraction, I don't have access to it, so I can't even check if it's there. You don't seem to understand the limitations of my thinking, my philosophy. You just go left and right as you see fit. You haven't even understood what I'm trying to say. So you're actually trying to argue against my philosophy, or at least reflect on my philosophy, using some cocked up ideas of what I'm doing. That doesn't follow what I'm doing. For example, if someone cuts me off on the road and it angers me, okay, then don't don't be on the road then. Why are you on the road where you could be angered? Well, how does that agreement, is it a part of an agreement you're doing there? You're just saying, well, if I was in this situation with this, that, and the other, okay, but how did you agree upon that situation? What was the agreement? Right? So I'm in this situation now, and I get angry. Well, control your emotions, bitch, right? You know what I mean? People have all these abstractions such as utilitarianism and the other. I don't care about somebody else's abstractions. How did you get to whether or not people have an abstraction? Right? So you have heard about somebody else's dogmas. But if you didn't have that abstraction yourself, you have internalized somebody else's descriptions of their dogmas. Well, you're the problem then. You're internalizing somebody else's shit without any objectification. But if you really dig deep into all the abstraction in a moral framework, I forgot to expand the text here, so I'm sorry. I can't go deeper into it. But I'm answering his question here. Do you have a philosophy? Right? Because he's doing this midstream kind of, he's jumping in there and I have a dogma, deal with my dogmas kind of thing here, right? Do you have a philosophy? I said. But then he has this this red herring approach. Well, I think everyone has some sort of philosophy. I didn't ask you what everybody has. I asked if you have a philosophy. Deal with my question, right? As I say here, I think everyone, quote, ... as in 9 billion imagined individuals. I'm trying to refer to all the supposed number of inhabitants of human beings on planet Earth. So how the hell would he... I think everyone has something. Okay, well, I don't care what you think, right? I asked you, do you have a philosophy? And then I say down here in the last one, show it to me. And I haven't heard from him for 6 days, right? So don't give me your bullshit if you don't want to follow it up. I ask you, do you have a philosophy? He doesn't want to answer my question. He just wants to jump in the deep end and talk about big abstractions. Bullshit. Because that's exactly what I'm avoiding. If you have to agree on something, you have to agree about objects, right? Okay. Last question. And it's sort of I don't know what to do about this one, right? A user 1337 says, there ain't no ethics beyond nihilism in my system. It is naturalism all the way down. Okay. Okay. So this is sort of a one sentence philosophy. Okay. I do like precision and conciseness. Is that even a word? Concisivity? Things to be concise. But this is not good enough, right? As I say here down there, you need to spell that out for me, right? There ain't no ethics beyond nihilism. So there is ethics. As long as it is nihilism in his system. So I'm not sure what is meant by nihilism. But is it an idea that you can't get to any morality? So nihilism is that which says you can't get to a moral principle. But he says there's no ethics beyond nihilism. Well, if nihilism is no moral principle, then you can't talk about there being no ethics beyond nihilism, because nihilism itself doesn't hold any ethics or any moral principle. You can do some ethics and then arrive at the conclusion that you can't get to a moral principle. Fine. You could have ethics without a moral principle in that sense, right? But this is self-contradictory in my opinion. There's no ethics beyond nihilism. But nihilism is no ethics. Correct me if I misunderstand what nihilism is, right? In your system. So what you're saying is there's only morality within nihilism in your system. And then, to best of my understanding, nihilism means there's no moral principle. It's kind of crazy, man, right? User 1337. It is naturalism all the way down. Down where? Into metaphysics or what? What is naturalism? What do you mean? My approach to objectivity, isn't that a kind of naturalism? Because I don't have to deal with somebody's abstractions. I don't have to plan my agreement in accordance with somebody's feeling. Naturalism is dealing with the objects, right? That's what I have to agree on. So I simply don't get this, right? And this is also sort of this, it's the same scenario if I stood in a conference hall, right? And there are 500 people listening to me. And I've stood there, for 2 days, spending 8 hours explaining my philosophy. And at the end of the day, when I say, okay, thank you for listening, and somebody opens the door and say, there ain't no ethics beyond nihilism in my system. It is naturalism all the way down, and then shut the door, right? It's like, it's sort of kindergarten philosophy, right? Oh man! For 5 days, he hasn't come back to tell me, elaborate on his one sentence philosophy here, right? Okay. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have further questions and clarifications of what you have seen in my comment or my reflections on your comments here, let me know. Please share, like, and subscribe, and consider donation links below to the Discord board, where there are links to where you can go and donate, and there's also there should be links to Patreon and Subscribestar below here. If you want to help me out, support my channel. And beyond that, have a nice day. See you in the next one.